There are bridges, bridges in the sky, and they are shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wood and wire, they can change two things to one. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than all. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than all. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross it with a song. Let us span another canyon, let us write another dawn. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines, for letting us use Bridges' song on Bridges programming. Welcome to Sunday on the Front Stoop, the longest stoop in the world. We are here and we talk about humanitarian issues. It's sponsored by the Human Renewable Energy Measure. That's the HREM.org. And that's, you don't have to give us any money. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to sign up. All you got to do is understand that all human beings have to have their basic needs met for minimal amount of their life, like an hour a day. And then they have their education, food, and shelter. And then you have 23 more hours to do what you want to do. So we have an agreement that all the humanity has to have their basic needs met in energy units for their basic needs, their education, food, and shelter. And then we agree upon that, and then we allow your free market to come in. And if we do that, we don't have to worry about the Muslims or the Jews or the Christians. It'll stop the wars because everyone's basic needs are met, and we have to agree upon that. And we need a measurement to bring that out, and a measurement that can't be manipulated. So we use energy units for that. And all human beings use the same exact amount of energy units. 1 million energy units for food, 1 million for water, and a certain amount of energy units for their shelter, depending upon where they live. And we all live about 80 years of age, so we can do an equation with that, which we have done through a physicist and several physicists, actually. And we want to make sure that we can adopt that measurement. And then the wars stop, the hatred stops, the bigotry could stop. It'll take several years, but it'll stop. And we need to get together as a human species. That's the goal of this program. However, my name is Jeff Bella. Next to me is Susan Coleman. On the phone with us is Dennis Carius, and he has a guest who actually is going to talk about one of the main problems we have in this society. And Dennis, go ahead, you're on.
Oh, great. It's great to be with you, Jeff and Susan. And it's fantastic to have my friend Kathy Manley on as our guest. Kathy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dennis. It's great to be on.
Hello, Kathy.
Hey.
Hi. Yes, Susan and Jeff are about as far south as you can go in our country. And we're about as far north as you can go. And it's interesting. And Jeff, I know you're
Without falling
you're in
off the
Florida.
edge of the
Well,
earth?
actually, Dennis, you could go to the Dry Tortugas, which is the furthest point south. It's south of Miami, and they built a fort there to protect commerce. There was never once a bullet or a cannon fired from there, and that's where they brought John Wilkes Booth there for help
As a prisoner.
and
After he
shot Lincoln. And that's the furthest
so
point
it became a
south
prison camp.
you can go in the United States, and we've been there, and it's a very interesting place.
No, actually, they didn't bring John Wilkes Booth. It was the
the
doctor who treated
right?
John Wilkes Booth, and I've
But
forgotten
but that's the
his name.
furthest point south. But again, they
He
built
was
that
pardoned
fort.
eventually.
They built that fort for the commerce, for trade, for money, and they wanted to protect our shorelines. And that brings us right up to today with somebody who's in jail now because the way the system's working, and the system isn't working very well. But let's have Kathy. Go ahead. You're on.
Well, let Dennis
All right. Well, I wanted to talk about the case of Yassin Arif and Mohammed Hussein. They are in jail because the system isn't working. That's certainly true. And there's a lot of other cases too that are similar. I am the legal director of the National Coalition to Protect Civil Freedoms, which is a coalition of about 20 Muslim and non-Muslim groups that advocate against preemptive prosecution and racial profiling. And preemptive prosecution, you might not know what that is, but it's a strategy developed by the government post 9/11 mainly, where particularly Muslim defendants are seen as a threat. And if the government is worried that they might someday in the future do something against the United States, then what they do is they figure out how to immobilize them, take them out. If they're abroad, they may drop a drone on them. If they're in the U.S., they will indict them in a sting operation or some other kind of unfair prosecution and send them to prison for a very long time.
This is not unlike
these cases a lot.
This is not unlike the way that we treated Germans and Japanese during World War II.
Well,
it was all,
especially the Japanese internment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a similar mentality to that, very much. It seems like this country goes through these cycles of repression, and we're in the middle of one right now where
very
Muslims
similar.
are, in the crosshairs.
Mm-hmm.
But I started this work with the case, as I mentioned earlier, of Yassin Arif and Mohammed Hussein here in Albany, New York, and it was an incredibly unfair sting operation where the FBI was suspicious of Yassin Arif. We don't know why exactly, because it's all based on secret evidence, which we have not to this day seen. And this case started, as far as we know, it started in 2003, and we still haven't seen the evidence that caused them to begin the sting operation. But we did know that they believed that Yassin was somebody in Al-Qaeda, and that clearly is not true because that person was killed. Somebody named Mohammed Yassin, that person was killed by a drone strike in 2010 while Yassin was sitting in prison. So, but they, for whatever reason, I think wrongful suspicions about Yassin, they started this sting operation, and they had a con artist, convicted felon named Shahed Hussein wear a wire and record conversations with Yassin and Mohammed. And I don't know, I mean, I can explain just briefly. I don't want to go in too much detail into this case because there's a lot of other things I want to talk about, but a sting operation is supposed to be, I mean, I think there's a lot of problems with them whenever they're used, but the idea is it's to catch people who are already committing crimes, and you introduce an informant into the mix, and then they record conversations or otherwise surveil the people and collect evidence that can then be used. But with these Muslim cases, they're not people who are already committing crime. You have the preemptive model where, for example, Dick Cheney said if there's a 1% chance that something might happen against the U.S. He was talking about a war, I guess, preemptive war, but it's the same model for prosecution. If there's a 1% chance that something might happen, you have to act as if it's a certainty. And that means that 99% of the people are basically innocent, and the damage done to their lives and their families and communities' lives counts as absolutely nothing in this analysis. And it's all based on fear, and irrational fear, I would say. So
that's exactly how we started out the show: fear and blind suspicion.
Yep. I think a lot of things are based on this irrational fear, especially in this country, and it's very, very damaging. But so they had this guy, Shahed Hussein, who was a convicted felon who committed fraud at the Motor Vehicles Department in Albany about 150 times. And he approached Muhammad Hussein and said he wanted to learn about religion from him. And Muhammad wasn't even the target. He was a co-founder of the Masjid al-Salam Mosque in Albany and owned a pizza shop. And it was struggling, and he also had some rental properties in the inner city that weren't doing well. So he was really hurting for money, and he was supporting an extended family. And this guy said he was very rich, and he wanted to learn about religion from Muhammad, and he also wanted to give him a loan, and he didn't need it all paid back because he wanted to help his Muslim brothers. And Muhammad thought, wonderful. Maybe he was a little naive, but then they needed somebody to witness the loan because Muslims, especially strict Muslims, will not use banks because they don't believe in interest. And so they give loans to each other, and it's a very common thing in the Muslim community. And they need somebody to witness the loan, and that's actually in the Quran. And very often it's Imam, who's a trusted figure. And Yassin was the Imam. And he was a Kurdish refugee from Iraqi Kurdish, who had to leave because the Kurds Saddam Hussein was trying to wipe them out. And he came to the U.S. as a UN refugee with his family and became the Imam. And he didn't speak very much English at that time. This was, he came in 1999. This was 2003. He still didn't speak very much English. But he was just brought in to witness the loan. But that was the FBI's plan. They just needed to get to him somehow. So they used Muhammad Hussein, who they weren't suspicious about, didn't want to go after him, but they didn't care that he was going to be entrapped in this thing too. It was the collateral damage of this. They were going after Yassin. And eventually, Shahed Hussein, the con artist guy, the informant, would say things to Muhammad about, oh, well, I help, support terrorists. And Muhammad didn't really care about that. Like, he just wanted the loan. He didn't think it had anything to do with the loan because that wasn't explained. In a sting operation, you're supposed to explain very clearly that this is an illegal plot, exactly what's going on, and if the people want to do it, then you can prosecute them. But you're not supposed to offer them a lot of money, like he was offering Muhammad $5,000, and not even explaining the situation. And Yassin didn't even know that there was anything illegal going on. He just thought it was a normal loan, and he would have these conversations, and he thought this guy was saying some weird things, but that it had nothing to do with the loan. All he cared about was that the payments were being made to repay the loan, and he kept records of it, kept receipts of it. So if there was anything illegal going on, why would he have done that? And so,
well, the bottom line here is that this really wasn't a sting operation; it was a frame.
Entrapment.
It was entrapment.
Yeah, and a lot of the sting operations are essentially entrapment, but this was even worse in the sense that Yassin didn't even know. I mean, entrapment is where somebody is offered, for instance, in one of the other cases involving the same informant, they offered this guy $250,000 to participate in this plot. And he knew that he was participating in a plot. Yassin didn't even know that. They never explained that to him.
Now, if the FBI walked over to me and someone offered me $250,000 to support our nonprofit organization, and they give me a lot of razzle dazzle how they believe or they want to support the Historical Society, the Historical Society or something like that. And I decided to say, okay, listen, we can use the donation or the money, and they tell me that they hate Muslims, for instance. I would sort of discount that and just keep on focusing on what I needed, I don't care what they're saying, but I can be easily entrapped or easily framed for being a terrorist.
Especially if it's in a language that you don't even know that well.
Exactly.
And I know Yassine very well at this point, and he likes to talk a lot. He doesn't always listen, and he actually speaks the language better than he understands it, which is unusual, but it's the same way I am, so I relate to that. I can speak Spanish better than I understand it. So he would say things and in his broken English, but he was understanding less than it appeared, because I know that from knowing him later. But the other thing that was a huge element in this case was that there was a ton of secret evidence, classified evidence. And they did that after something came out early on where the government, after Yassine was arrested, the government said, well, he can't get out on bail because he's a terrorist commander. We found some notebooks in a camp in Iraq, and it said Commander Kak Yassine, K-A-K, this word that they said meant commander in Arabic. And we said, as defense attorneys, we said, well, we want that page. We want to have an independent translator look at it. And the judge said, yes, give that to them. That's fair. You're trying to use that as a basis for locking him up. And when a couple weeks later, when we came up to the detention hearing, the government sent a letter and said, oh, well, actually, that was a little mistake. It doesn't actually mean commander. It's not even in Arabic. It's Kurdish. It's the Kurdish word for brother.
Oh.
It's actually, we learned, the most common word in the Kurdish Sorani dialect, and it's a term of respect. And Yassine is from that area. It means absolutely nothing. It means that he was respected. That's all it means.
We have a friend
so
from Africa who's always calling Jeff brother, and I'm sure there's that's not uncommon for that kind of reference.
We realized they were playing, that they couldn't be trusted, that the prosecution couldn't be trusted. They were doing things like this, and they realized that they couldn't give us this evidence that was false, and so at that point they invoked the Classified Evidence Procedures Act, and from then on they proceeded to give the judge all sorts of things that we never saw. And in fact, the lead trial attorney, Terrence Kindlin, I'm still working for him, although he's retiring, but I was helping him with the case at that point, and he got a security clearance specifically so he could see this evidence, but still never got to see it. They said, you don't get to see it because it's not favorable to the defense. Well, guess what? If you make up fake evidence showing somebody's an Al-Qaeda member, that doesn't appear favorable to the defense. But if it's false evidence, as I'm sure it was, as the other thing was, that the one thing we did see, and the evidence that the guy that they thought he was died later, was killed, if it's fake evidence, then it is favorable to the defense. And how are you going to know that if the defense doesn't get to see it and challenge it? So this is a huge problem, not just in this case, but in many of these so-called terrorism cases, where the prosecution gives lots of classified evidence to the judge and the defense never gets to see it, never gets to show that it's false in many cases. Because in my experience, just like with the Japanese internment, when there's secret evidence, very often it is false. Like with that case, the Japanese internment, when it went to the Supreme Court, the Solicitor General told the Supreme Court that there was a secret report showing that Japanese Americans posed a security threat to the U.S. And in Korematsu, as you may know, they upheld the internment of the Japanese Americans. Later, they apologized and paid some reparations. But at that time, they upheld it based on this secret report, which, when it finally came to light, showed the exact opposite, that the Japanese Americans were not a security threat, and that the Solicitor General had lied to the Supreme Court based on this secret report that they couldn't see. And so I think every time you have classified evidence, and when it's used so widely, you have to really question, the accuracy of it.
The point that we're looking at is transparency, and no one wants to be transparent. They're lies.
They have an agenda.
They have an agenda,
right.
And that's the problem with
that's
our entire
foster distrust to the
and
Muslim.
it's not just this country; it's every way the system works, and that's what we're focusing on. But in this
trial, what happened was, because of this secret evidence that the judge was seeing that we couldn't challenge, we couldn't even see, he told the judge told the jury that the FBI had good and valid reasons for targeting Yassin. So what happened was there was really no evidence against him. I mean, very little. It was very confusing, and the jury actually acquitted him of almost every count until they got to the last set of counts. It was very complicated, but the last set, and there was nothing different about those than the other ones. And I believe that the only reason they didn't acquit him entirely is because the judge had told them, the judge, not the prosecutor, well, the prosecutor did too, but the judge, who's supposed to be neutral, had told them that the FBI had good reasons to go after Yassin. So they were afraid to acquit him, like, oh, maybe he really is a bad guy, and they couldn't tell us all this stuff, and so we better not let him go. So I think that's what happened.
How long have these individuals been in prison now?
15 years.
So they've been, Yassin's been in since 2005, so he's been in for, since the fall of 2005, so 10 and a half years.
Wow.
He gets out in October of 2018, unless we can get him out sooner. I just filed a commutation petition to President Obama asking his sentence to be reduced. And his co-defendant, Mohammed Hussein, he stayed out on bail longer, so he's been locked up for less than 10 years, and he's not due to get out until, I think, January 2020 or 19. January 2019.
That's outrageous.
Or
This is
20,
the trouble.
So what we've got is
and he's not in good health either.
Yeah,
and
this
so
is an
we're going to do a commutation petition for him too, and some other people.
These secret policies, this fostering of distrust that is the intent of our government at this point is crushing lives. Essentially, it's destroying people's lives on a false premise. It's amazing.
It really is, and that's something that people don't want to think about. They want to think about they're afraid of Muslims, or they're afraid of this or that, and they want to do all these harsh policies.
That's because
they don't think about the damage it's doing to really good people and their families who are completely innocent. The whole community, the whole Muslim community.
The reality,
the repercussions
reality is that these people are probably just as good as any Jews or Christians or anyone else, but they've been targeted just because of the way the system is working.
Well, they've been chosen as scapegoats. This whole community of Muslims is being chosen as the scapegoat of this particular terrorist war on terror period in our development or lack of development. I want to
ask Karen, what do you think? What do you think is Kathy? What do you think is the root cause of all this stuff?
Well, I guess I really think it is the irrational fear that because I think when you have, and the government promotes this irrational fear.
Okay, but no, I want to get beyond that. Why do you think the government promotes this irrational fear?
Well, it's easier to control people when they're afraid.
Now, what's the point of the control?
Well,
what is their goal?
Governments always like to control people.
But the point of control of the population is to control, and the way they control the population worldwide is through the economy. Can we agree upon that?
Well, that's one way. I mean, they also drop drones on people and lock them up.
But isn't that done? In other words, isn't that done? They say, okay, we have a terrorist, and the terrorist is there, so we have to have a war on terrorism. But the reality is that there's more terrorism going on around the world. It was 7 million people, 7 million people killed, genocide in Rwanda because they needed natural resources out of it, and they're using a scapegoat to change the way we're thinking about, like in politics. The minute we have an election year, every single election year we have, presidential election, it slowly builds up to gays in the military or gays, whatever, and then they put out abortion issues, and but no one talks about the real issues of the quality of life of all of humanity, and that's the whole point of the programming here. Is we're saying that every human being in the world must have their basic needs met, before your free market can take effect. And no one's allowing that to happen. We're killing people all over the world for our economy. Does that make sense to you, or do you think we missed the point?
Yeah, no,
somewhere?
I think there's a lot of truth in that, and certainly I would like to see everybody's basic needs be met, and I think that would solve, so many problems.
Well, I must say this because we work with, the whole point is to get everybody in the world has their own belief systems, whatever that may be. And Dennis and I talk about a lot of things. He brings out the word greed, and I always say, well, I'm a very ambitious person. Am I greedy? I have more than the average person. Does that make me a greedy person? If I have $1 more than the next person, am I greedy? If you're an attorney and you charge X amount of dollars, are you greedier than the person who's digging a ditch? The problem here is we don't have a measure that says every human being in the world, no matter where they are in the world, for about an hour, because of technology and natural resources, for about an hour of their labor, which is, again, it has to be redefined.
During their working life.
Their working life. We all live about 80 years of age. We all need 1 million energy units of water, 1 million energy units of food a year. And we all need, and the more education a human being has, the better off our world would be. If we can accept that as a social agreement, then we can allow your free market to take effect, and then this kind of behavior will dissipate. The hatred, the bigotry, the fear, it would dissipate, because you're not going to have the kind, instead of in competition and looking for scapegoating, which is what we're doing. And we've done that we do that with Jews, we do that with Christians, we do that with, and this has been going on for 5,000 years. The same crap, the same, go fight for your king in the glory, go fight those, whatever, the Genghis Khans, or this 5,000 years we've been doing the same stuff. Now I realize that the problem you're into is you have to take care of where the rubber hits the road. These guys are in jail, their life has been terminated basically for their real life, and they're innocent people, and you're trying to get them off. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say it's not just Yasin and Muhammad. We studied 300 cases, actually no, 399 cases that the government called domestic terrorism cases in between 2001 and 2010, and we studied them, and we looked at who actually did anything, and there were only 4 out of those cases where people were actually involved in attacks within the United States. The rest of them were basically fake cases, and they were calling them terrorists, and they're locking them up for long periods of time. We have a couple hundred people who are in prison for long, 10 to 20, sometimes life in prison in these cases. And so it's not just Yasin and Muhammad, it's a large number of people. We raise money every year to give them gifts at Ramadan, to give for their commissary account, because some of them never get anything in their commissary account. Some of them have families abroad or families here that are struggling just to meet basic ends meet.
Again, you were back to the,
anyway, so
we just went back to the economy again. Yeah. See, that's the problem. All humanity is having so many people in this world, not just in the United States, especially, well, it's a worldwide economic problem, and even in Cuba, I mean, if you say something against the government, or even we know friends in Canada who had a newspaper, and they were held for sedition. This was 14 years ago, right after Kennedy. I mean, years ago after Kennedy was shot, they made a spoof in their newspaper, and the government tried to hold them for sedition. Now they had to leave the country. Now this is a problem we're running into worldwide because of our economics. It's not, I think human beings just aren't smart enough to come to a measurement that says we all have to have our basic needs met. Not a minimum wage, not welfare. All basic needs in energy units must be met. And that's why we have these problems we're running into. And by the way, I don't want to simplify this, because I realize that people, I have neighbors next to me, they don't know where the next meal's coming from. I have friends of mine who are poverty stricken. I have friends of mine who are in jail for no reason to speak of. I mean, they would just they look the wrong way, and they don't and they sound differently than the typical American. We got a big problem here, and the problem, if you look at it carefully,
there is no typical American.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to be. They're not fitting into the mold. If you don't fit into the mold, you're going to be harassed, and that's what we're dealing with now.
We're also got a massive overreaction from 9/11, where the FBI and the CIA, they either missed or dismissed the clues that they had to possibly stop that horrible tragedy, and now they're making up for it by like overreacting to they're just over compensating so that it looks like they're never going to miss anything again.
It's not true. It's simply not.
And
true.
you can't. It's not going to happen that way.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, what? Who was speaking? Dennis?
Dennis, was that you?
Well, no, that was me. I'm just saying I agree with that. That the FBI agents, when they get interviewed, they say, "Well, I don't want to be the one who misses something. I don't want to be the one who fails to prevent another attack," and they just focus on that to the extent where they don't care how many innocent people they lock up, as long as there's not like one guilty person who gets away. And actually, our criminal justice system is supposed to be the exact opposite of that, going way back. The idea that it's better to let 10 guilty people or some number of guilty people free than to lock up one innocent person.
Right,
and this
innocent
fear,
until
this
proven
irrational
guilty.
fear, really, it's irrational, I think.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Flip that on its head.
But the irrationality comes from the way our system itself is working. Our government does lie to us, and if you don't believe that, you can listen to even NPR the other day. They had somebody from Apple on, and he said very simply, the government lies. And
everybody knows that, I think.
So now that we know that, the question is, why is the government lying? Who is controlling the government? The government's controlled by major corporations, not us. If you can see that the running for our president's over $1 billion this trip.
It's necessary.
Right. I mean,
well, what's really interesting about that is, and I was involved in the Occupy movement, and we talked a lot about getting money out of politics and how after Citizens United that elections were just being bought. But what's kind of interesting is that you have this insane lunatic Donald Trump who's the front runner, and he didn't even spend any money to do that. So that sort of dispels that that's not always true. That it's not always about the money.
Well,
something else going on there, and scary.
Wait a minute. You can be sure he's spending money.
Let me explain to you how Donald Trump works. I actually was in politics for a little bit. I ran against someone. I ran for U.S. Senate against Hillary Clinton and Rudy Giuliani on the independence line, and my whole issue was energy, by the way, for New York State. And I met Donald Trump, and he wanted to get the independence line. I'm going back 15, 16, 17 years ago. He's always wanted to be president, but the way he works it, he may not appear to throw money in, but what he does is when there's a convention, he rents an entire floor of a building and puts of a hotel and brings all kinds of food in. And of course, reporters love that because they have free food and booze and drinks, and he keeps one suite for himself. And then you go to, and so he gets really great press coverage.
Court.
Now,
he just spent way less money than like Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush poured all this money into advertising and I don't know whatever else, and did terribly.
The thing about any of this is who do you believe, for one thing. And Jeb Bush was putting money into advertising because he thinks that that's still a way to get to people. But Trump has. He's got a less trackable routes for his money. Advertising is a very trackable type of venue as far as money being spent. Trump does it. He's ahead of the curve in this. He's very, very clever in that way.
Yeah, no, and I
Yes,
think
he's spending money,
spend money
and a
in
lot
ways
more
that are-
money than any of the other candidates, but
But
he's spending
not
it
the
in a
way-
very surreptitious, different way than they're used to. And so he can't be tracked in the same ways that traditional candidates are normally.
I want to get back to where the rubber hits the road.
But he's spending a lot of money.
The problem I'm running into is, I don't care who gets into office anywhere in the world. What's controlling the politicians everywhere in the world is the big corporations or the economic system itself. And until we actually can get a measurement so all humanity has to have their basic needs met, we're going to continue to do this all over the world. I mean, we went to a conference.
You're saying the premise of the economics must be basic needs met first.
While we're putting out
for a minimal amount of people.
While we're putting out the fires, which we have to do, which you are doing. If you have a problem where you have to eat, you have to live, you have to protect yourself, and we're being bombarded with dysfunctionality, or actually it's very functional. It's very functional. The way the system's working is very functional. It keeps us so busy defending ourselves, and that's what you're doing. You're spending a tremendous amount of your time as a defense attorney defending someone who's innocent, where if we can get rid of the root cause of the problem, and the root cause has to go back to 5,000 years ago, to the economic system. Look, for instance, I'm going to give you, I'm trying to make it simple. It's very hard to do this, but how long has gravity been here?
I mean,
forever, right?
I guess a lot longer than the planet Earth.
But when we first discovered or actually named it and started to measure it, we still don't understand it, but it's only been 400 years ago we actually labeled it and started to measure gravity. We still don't understand it.
Well, interestingly, they just heard it like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, now, we thought the world was flat as a species up to 600 years ago, 1400s. Now, I'm saying to you that we need a measurement that everyone knows, that we all agree upon, that all human beings must have their food and shelter taken care of. And if you go minimum wage, who's going to decide that? It's manipulated. If you go welfare, again, that's another cul-de-sac. Yes, it does. People are working, and the people who are alive today around the world, they're getting their basic needs met, but at what cost of their life? So we have to come to a social agreement. And that's where Bernie Sanders misses out. That's where every politician misses out. They all dance around it since Plato's day. But now, for the first time in history, we have a measurement in energy units that we can all agree upon, that all humanity must have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of work a day. And then, so now we have a communistic thought, by the way, that all human beings must have education shared equally at no cost. Then we have to have a social agreement. The social agreement is that all humanity must have their basic needs met in energy units around the world. And then we can have the free market kick in. Once that kicks in, I want to work 23 more hours a day and make as much as I possibly can. I'm not hurting anybody while I do that. And that changes the entire complexion of what's going on right now around the world, where people are being shot, people are put into prostitution, people are being put in jail for no reason other than cul-de-sacking. And that's what I call it. It puts people in a cul-de-sac where they have to defend themselves. You have to work. I mean, very, very wealthy people, what they have that we don't have is they hire someone to get on the telephone and spend hours on the phone to get their bank statement straightened out. We don't have that. We have to be on the phone ourselves. We have to be if we go shopping, we have to go to the supermarket. If there's a problem in traffic, we have to deal with that. Very wealthy people don't even go shopping. They don't even think about the annoyances of life. And they keep on putting most of the people in the world into cul-de-sacs that we have to work their asses off to stay alive and defend ourselves, constantly defending ourselves. We need to get to the root cause of this problem. I believe that we have an answer. And it's a simple, simple measurement. And all people have to do to get that fix is to understand that all needs must be met, an agreement, and put that into the language. And that's why we're doing
into the
economic language.
Right.
And it's called the Human Renewable Energy Measure. And that was figured out by a fellow in RPI. He's a physicist, and said, you've got to go by a measurement based on physics, and it'll change the entire world. And that's the problem we're running into.
Physics is the energy unit.
Physics is we can't live. Supposing I legislate the fact that all our prisoners are only going to have 300 calories a day. You know that in a month they'll be dead. So we can't change the physics of that. They can't have any water. We're going to legislate that. Well, you're going to know they're going to die without water. You know, I mean, this is all economies of physics. You can't change that. So we have to allow that all humanity, we have to agree that all human beings must have their basic needs met in energy units that cannot be manipulated by language. And that's why, anyway, that's where we're coming from. But what you've been working real hard on this deal. How do you, and you've been, of course, this has been going on for years, and you did make some headway because you got him to be released in a few years. But what do you think, what else could you have done differently, or what could have been done differently than you've done so far? Are you there?
Well, Dennis is here. Kathy might be right back.
She didn't hear the question then?
I'm not sure. I cannot answer that.
Okay, well, Dennis, what do you think of this? What do you think she could have done differently?
Well, wait a minute. When you say she,
as an attorney, what could have she done differently?
No, I think she did everything. It was excellent. What they did as an attorney. This was right after the 9/11 attack.
Right.
Yes, after 2001. Have you heard of like the politics of fear?
Yes, I certainly have. And that politics of fear is what is based on. Well, by the way, is Kathy back yet?
Well,
I think
she'll
you must
let
have
us know when
lost
she
her.
comes back.
Dennis, you may have to recall her. Her phone may have blipped.
Yeah, that's possible. I can try that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have to call you back, Dennis, but because we only have about 12 minutes left of the program.
No, hold on, and Jeff, please don't call me back. Okay, just if you hold.
Okay.
I can try to call Kathy.
Very
back.
fine.
It sounds like you lost the call.
Anyway, it's a difficult thing because
the politics of fear is just what it's saying. It's another way to manipulate large populations toward a goal. So what is the goal is the question you have to ask. What is the politics of fear leading us toward? What is it trying to bend people's minds to agree to? And this is a very important thing to think about and to consider. What is the goal? What is the reason for this kind of extreme manipulation of most of the population of the world, essentially? I mean, the war on terror encompasses the whole world. I mean, this is like a brilliant stroke on the part of politics, if you want to call it that, or the message that's coming from who knows on high. We don't know where these messages are formulated, where these slogans are formulated. They do come to us through our media outlets ultimately, and then we are asked either to accept them as the truth or to consider the source, wherever that is, and try to figure out where what truth there is in what's being said and what truth is being left out from what's being said. And here we've got the formulation of a concept, the war on terror, you know, it's like a brilliant stroke on the part of, as I say, we don't know what group came up with that term. It may have been our own security outfits, the FBI, the CIA, who knows, you know, where it originated, or it could have just been an aside by some reporter and somebody else picked it up and said, oh, that's great, let's use that. And now, you know, it's not World War I, it's not World War II, it's a war that encompasses everything indefinitely.
Forever.
Indefinitely. It's not just a couple of countries that have a profound disagreement with each other over some kind of socioeconomic structure or governmental structure. It's something that can go on forever. The war on terror. I mean, you can always terrorize people anywhere. It's a technique.
It just takes one. It just takes. By the way, it just takes one.
Planting that kind of.
It just takes one.
Of an instinctive reaction and stimulating it is very, very easy.
It just takes one.
I mean, you can see, anybody can see that this kind of
option in the
development.
To simply leave your message, press 1.
Oh.
Otherwise, to hear it, press 2.
Okay.
To re-record the message, press 3.
Dennis, you're sending over a telephone message.
Okay.
Anyways, what I'm saying is.
You're recording a message.
Oh, Dennis.
To simply leave your message, press.
Well, I wanted to get Kathy Manley's website that she wanted us to look at. We never got that out there. So.
Do you know the website, Dennis?
Do you know the website, Dennis? Okay,
we don't not have that information.
Okay, unfortunately, we didn't get her website out there. But I want to bring a thing out to you
when you
say the.
But may I complete my point?
No, well, go ahead.
Because I was trying to. What you've got when you've got a war on terror is a war that's never going to end, because you know it's like it's a way that governments and economies can continue to manipulate the rest of us, the 99.9 or whatever you want to call it, Dennis, indefinitely, just through our fears, and this is you have to go back to Churchill. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Well, they figured out a way to perpetuate fear in people indefinitely, and this is an extraordinarily dangerous circumstance, because it requires all of us to have courage, essentially, to be courageous.
I just want to
and not allow this kind of situation to continue as they would like it to.
I want to bring this out. It's very hard to do this because I want to show you how fear works. Dennis, you ready for this? Dennis, you there?
Yes, he's ready for this.
Okay, now I want to show you how fear works. And this holds true whether you're a Muslim or you're a Jew or you're a Christian. If you like jelly beans, and so I brought this out at a different show, if you like jelly beans and you really have a whole bowl of jelly beans and you grab into those jelly beans and you just eat those jelly beans every day, you grab a handful of jelly beans, and I put one poison jelly bean in there, you're going to be very fearful of eating jelly beans.
Well, those from that jar.
From that jar, or any jelly beans, because they may be a poison jelly bean in every jar. Or you may find there may be botulism, or you maybe find that there's a guy with a gun. One guy, one thief in a neighborhood brings the whole neighborhood down because of one thief. One person who shoots a doctor who performs abortion, that brings the whole system down. I mean, every time you do something that creates one problem, brings the whole system down. And that's what the fear is. So no matter what happened to the 9/11, we are afraid of that happening again. The war on fear, or the burden of fear, and that's our problem. That they capitalize on this. I really wanted to get the comments of that person who was with us, Kathy Manley, but we have a problem now. I also want to bring something else out, that we could change this by so simply putting into our vocabulary the human renewable energy measure. It needs to be into the vocabulary. So this is Sunday on the Front Stoop. The Pope brought this out a few months back. He's no longer in the news. They cut him right out. That we need to change the way we do business in our economic world. We need to change the way we do it. So all you need to do is, you don't have to give us any money. You don't have to join anything. Just if you understand that all humanity must have their basic needs met, their education, food, and shelter, and we can get that, the HREM, into the vocabulary, we've changed the entire world. And
Jeff,
then, go ahead.
Quick question: what website should we go to get that? www. What?
The HREM.org, HREM.org. And if you're looking at us on the screen now, it's on the screen. Renew the Earth is one of our websites, which is a nonprofit. And we always talk about fun things on that, and we talk about positive things. And then we have the Human Renewable Energy Measure, and of course, Bridges Programming, which is what we try to get this message out with. So we have 3 websites: bridgesprogramming.com, the Human Renewable Energy Measure, which is on the screen right now, the HREM.org, and then we have Renew the Earth, which is a nonprofit group. But we don't ask you for money, all we want, or join any groups. Just understand what we're saying and try to get this message out to your church groups. You ask your pastor, instead of doing a sermon, do a Herman or an HRM or a Herman instead of a sermon. Talk about all humanity must have their basic needs met before our economic system can actually control anything. It needs to have it, so all around the world, our system is now made sure that their basic needs are met. I'm sorry we lost our guest today, and I guess I was hoping we can get her to comment.
Maybe she'll come back on another program.
Yeah, you can get her. We can get her back on Wednesday or something.
Since
if
I
you
did
want.
mention in our summary that we'd speak a little bit about what Pope Francis, actually, I'm sorry, I was reading something else here. I was referring to Pope Paul, but Pope Francis's encyclical that came out early in the spring
this year,
this last spring. I'll just read some of what he said in his introduction, and he's quoting St. John Paul II. So these kind of ideas have been in the Catholic Church for forever. Anyway, he's saying here of St. John Paul II, and Pope Francis is quoting him in his own encyclical. He warned, quote, that human beings frequently seem to, quote, see no other meaning in their natural environment than what serves for immediate use and consumption. Subsequently, he called for a global ecological conversion. At the same time, he noted that little effort had been made to, quote, safeguard the moral conditions for an authentic human ecology, unquote. The destruction of the human environment is extremely serious. Human life is itself a gift which must be defended from various forms of debasement. Every effort to protect and improve our world entails profound changes in, quote, lifestyles, models of production and consumption, and the established structures of power which today govern societies. Authentic human development has a moral character. It presumes full respect for the human person, but it must also be concerned for the world around us and, quote, take into account the nature of each being and of its mutual connection in an ordered system, unquote. So here we're talking, he's covering in this one introductory statement with quotes from St. John Paul II, Pope Francis is covering our dilemma at this point, our impact on the planet, and our lack of a moral character for our economics. I mean, if you want to simplify it, we have no moral character in our economic system, which is governing everything on this planet right now.
There's no basic way of measuring it. There's no basic way of saying, we know there's something wrong with our system.
It can be
we
created.
know we're putting people in jail. We're changing the laws that don't benefit humanity. We're changing the way we eat our food. We're changing the way we breathe our air. We're changing the way we poison our water and our land, and we're killing other human beings around the world because of the economic system. We must address that.
Here's another quote, and it's from Pope Francis's predecessor, Benedict the 16th. Quote, eliminating the structural causes of the dysfunctions of the world economy and correcting models of growth which have proved incapable of ensuring respect for the environment.
That is, by the way, that's a while back. And we've been talking about this for thousands of years, but we now have a measurement. You can do something about it. Please, please, I can't employ how much frustrating this is, because we all have our problems, but we need to face up to a simple measurement we must put into the economic system. All you need to do is just understand what we're talking about. If you understand it enough, please go to the website, try to and use your own words, any way you can do it. Where there's no head on the snake, go get whatever you can do. Use your own imagination to make sure all humanity has their basic needs met for a minimal amount of work, and then you have a free market that will work fairly. It's not working now because there's no measure. Please, that's your answer to, I think we can try it. That's your answer to the problem. And I think if you face up to that we have to stop killing one another around the world, the entire system will change. So anyway, that's the story. Dennis, I want to thank you, and I want to thank your guest. I'm sorry we lost her, though. If we can get her back, that'd be good. And when you get a chance to give her a call, tell her thank you for being on the program. And if she wants to try to do this again on another show, we'll be more than happy to put her on again.
That's great, Jeff.
Okay.
Great. I want to thank you and thank Susan, and I really want to thank Kathy Manley for being on with us today.
And if you can get the website, we'll put the website out there because I wanted to get that out there. Thank you so much. Have a very, very good day and enjoy your weekend. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dennis.
Goodbye, Susan.
A dirty little war breaks out somewhere across the sea, and suddenly the price of oil goes up. Your neighbor's out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough. Oh, energy, energy, it all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy, it all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy, energy, it all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.